Hey everyone, Tim here with the TFT Patch 17.8 rundown. We only have a couple more of these left to do for Space Gods, and so this one is still pretty short as well, but there's still a few exciting changes to talk about. So let's get started. All right, so the patch goals. A lot of the team has shifted over to focus on Enchanted Wilds and making sure that PvE launch is as good as possible. I think this video is going to be coming out the same day as the PvE rundown that I did, going over all the champions and traits. There's a lot of cool stuff in that set. Definitely go check it out. But for those of you who are still in love with space, there's still a lot to do for the actual set. So the top of the meta, it's been kind of stale for a while. Some of that is due to like a 3-week patch. Some of that's due to the last patch being a little bit smaller and buff heavy. But mainly the top tiers haven't really changed, which kind of constricts what we can do on the bottom, right? We can buff the bottom champions up a lot, but if the top of the meta is still Anima Squad and 2 tanky Samira, then there's not really room for them to go. So we're going to be nerfing those. And we're still going to be focusing on buffing those solo carries that haven't really worked yet. And there's a couple like fun changes to add. Again, we've kind of spread out the wacky changes over a few patches, right? There's going to be another patch after this. So expect those trickling in for this patch and last patch. And then for the last patch, we get to do kind of whatever we want the closer we get to Enchanted Wilds launch. But on to the traits. 2 nerfs for Anima. First one is the Anima Squad items. 400 is a little bit too consistent, which is kind of just a factor of how the trait's been designed. I think that's something we're going to be looking at going forward. Anima Squad is kind of the ultimate lost streak trait. And due to that, it's very, very consistent. And it's like cool that you don't have to have the trait in all the time on exactly 2-1 to do well. But you do want to like build the like lost streak too strongly, right? It's like too focused on one exact play pattern. And that play pattern is really, really consistent. And I've always harped on consistency versus power. I think it's time in the set to like, hey, it's had its time for a while. It's been fun. It's been really exciting. Let's nerf it and see what happens. So these are the 3 biggest performing Anima items we'll be knocking down. This is going to be a hit to that mech Anima comp, but just Anima in general. And then the other nerf is Anima 5. Obviously, we went really, really hard. We kind of expected it was going to be really strong, but I think it was better to err on this side than do all this work for Anima 5 and people still don't think it's very, very good. Again, some common rules here that we should always abide by. Again, last patch, we were very loose with them. Is that, hey, on stage 2 and early stage 3, you probably shouldn't have easy access to legendaries, but with any emblem or just high rolling emblems, you could get 5 Anima on stage 2, which would give you a bunch of 5 costs, which like was very exciting, very unique, but probably too easy. We've lowered a lot of the options. I've nerfed a few of the options, so it's kind of going down about like 30-40% of gold. People had a lot of fun with it. It should still be very, very strong now that we know the general power level of it, but much more reasonable to play against. Some additional adjusted options, right? The 2-5 cost goes down to 1-5 cost. The Challenger emblem is just a Challenger emblem. We've taken out the Voyager emblem, and then we've just kind of lowered the gold all around. So Conduit, this looks like a nerf. That's but it's not labeled as a nerf. But the team-wide mana regen at the 5-piece is going to go from 3 to 2. This seems like a whatever thing. But that's because we added a Conduit champion into the game, which I'll talk about later. And Psionic, this is one of the verticals that has never been good. I think later in the set, we kind of focused on Sona being good because Sona was never a consistent carry throughout like the first couple patches. And we thought that, hey, maybe if Sona got better, then Psionic would be more of a thing to flex into. Never really hit there. So these are big buffs to the 4 Psionic items. Remember, you only get these buffs if they're on a Psionic champion. So that's why Biomatter Preserver is kind of a Gragas only item. I mean, you could put it on Mastery if you really wanted a 3rd item for him, but it's not that good. Big buffs there. Join Unblink, more damage. Malware Matrix, more damage. Target Lock Optics, all more damage. So hopefully for Psionic is at least something you consider on stage, early stage 5. All right, on the champions. Briar, she had that early patch of dominance with Primordian, kind of fallen off there, and it's kind of just the extra unit for Anima. I think Primordian could use some help, especially at this point in the set when it hasn't been around in a while. So here's her 580 buff back. Remember, if we can just 1-to-1 the patches, this is the AD she was at when she was really dominant. So interesting to see where she'll be. TF, a pretty large buff here. I think we have a lot of fun things we can do with this spell for the final patch with the actual variants and how much like high rolls and low rolls you can have. But for now, just a big buff to him. He's kind of fallen off as a Fate Weaver carry, which means that he doesn't exist at all. right? We've all opted to Caitlyn and then or not playing TF, which is pretty sad. For 2 costs, the newfound Akali, right? I think people made a cool note that like, hey, this champion's been unchanged for about 5 weeks ish now. She did get a bunch of buffs, and I think the last buff we were like already nervous about. But TFT is a deep game. There's a lot to discover. People really optimized her builds, how to play her. And even over the course of this one patch, it went from, wow, Akali 3 is really, really insanely OP to, wait a minute, I can just do the same thing with Akali 2 and then do whatever I want, which is usually a sign that a champion is way too overpowered. The nerf here is going to be on that Nova strike damage, right? People have optimized how to use this. A pretty big nerf at the 2-star, right? We don't want 2-star Akali 5 Nova to be a stable option on the stage 4. Like, definitely not. And you really need to go to 3-star to get that power. But this is a cool note on how people discover and keep solving TFT, even, what is this, 7 patches into the set. Gnar, some of you know how Enchanted Wilds is going, right? The traits in it, the champions in it. But for those who don't, here's a little teaser. He's a brawler. What could that mean going into set 18? Who knows? But we didn't actually adjust him at all after adding the tag because I think brawler's a little bit of a weird comp to fit him into. And he could use a little bit of a non-damage buff. So new comps to build around for Gnar. 3 cost, Diana. We've had problems with this type of fighter. I think the role system did a lot of good things. But there's this one edge case of these like really bulky melee fighters that have to go through one target at a time that we haven't really found how to scale well into like late game, right? I think the Darius type units get through it by just doing a ton of single target damage, but Diana is this weird mix of like single target but not single target, so she ends up just being too slow late game. So we're trying a pretty big buff here. Again, 10 mana on a fighter just means 1 less auto attack, right? They don't get mana from taking damage. And then we've compensated for the shield because the last thing we want is her to be this stall tank. We want her to actually kill stuff and progress the fight. So interesting to see where this one goes. Then Misfortune, just the 2 other forms besides Challenger have just kind of not been seen. I think these 2 also can be like the crux of a lot of new comps when they're adequately powerful. We didn't focus on this beforehand because Challenger was a pretty good linchpin and had a bunch of comps around it. And so it kind of fell below. And I don't think these are this far off. So these are small buffs to these 2. Cool things to play around. Again, there is one more Conduit in the game. So Conduit MF actually has another comp now. And a tank. Spoiler. And then Samira, again, not touching too tanky at this point because I think we've definitely proven that the interaction with the identical space grooves is causing a lot of the power. And to honestly nerf too tanky would be like to like have the augments power, in which points we should take it out. But we don't want to remove comps, definitely like on the 8th patch of the set when people have been playing him for a while. We just don't need it to be S tier for the 2nd or 3rd patch in a row. So we're taking a Samira nerf. This Samira nerf is directly to the passive and the knockup. So this is going to be like multiplied when you're playing too tanky. That board uses a lot of chain CC and bursting your tank to be successful. And so this is going to be hitting that. We'll hit normal Samira, which is a bit sad. But I think this is a healthier direction for the comp. All right, 4 cost. Riven. If you look at Riven, her data is great. If you actually look into Riven and watch her in fights, she doesn't really do much, right? For most of the set, she's been a very, very good secondary carry for Corki, but you didn't really care about what she did, what items she had, which is cool as a flex unit. But it was kind of sad that she never had that solo carry fantasy, especially if you're like a Riven fan. Right, I think we even saw moments in the Meeple comp where people were talking about Melio being better than Riven, which is like never good. Obviously, Timebreaker, very, very strong trait. Rogue, very strong trait. But just doesn't carry the damage to be worth investing in over your main carry. So buffing over damage, she's still really good. So couldn't go too far here, but expect her Riven comps to be a little bit better. And maybe you can itemize Riven before those other 4 costs. Morgana, again, kind of a hint to Enchanted Wilds and what's happening next, but she becomes a conduit now, and we've kind of balanced her accordingly. She was very, very strong for the past 3 patches as well, so I think this is going to be neutral to a small nerf to her, but conduit, which means that you can get 2 conduit on a lot more boards, definitely go deeper into that conduit line, which is why we nerfed to 5 conduit aura, but play with her. She's in some more new comps as well. For 5 costs, kind of leaving it the same. I think they all landed pretty well. But Zed still isn't really worth the risk. So going pretty hard on this buff, especially at the 1-star, so that you can actually like live longer. Because we're like near the end of the set, people should be able to have fun with the new content and all the augments. So buff to Zed. And that leaves us to one last change, which is just going to be one augment. Again, we are pretty stable in the augment field after all the changes. But this augment has always been a pretty like recombobulator-esque augment that is just weak right now. So there's no problem with making it a little bit more clickable, a little bit more fun. So we just buff the rerolls a lot. Click this, see what emblems you get, and play a new comp you haven't played before. So that's it for 17.8. As always, thanks for playing, and I'll see you guys in Space Gods and in Enchanted Wilds really soon. See ya.